the people, and maybe I'm fortunate, when I think of the people in my life that are like between like 47 and 53, I look at them and like they're still trying new things, like they're still like living life. So I don't know. Like I don't think it's as old as I'm making it out to be making fun of you.
End the sentence with making fun of you. It hurts.
Yes.
Let me tell you, it hurts.
Yeah. How are you feeling?
This is just out and roundabout it. It's a very weird day because a close family friend of ours is having surgery and is in a very, their health is in a very bad way. And it just happens to be surgery today. And she is a little older than me, but not very much. So, and you keep having these reminders, even outside of COVID, because honest to God, I don't know of anyone like my age who's passed away because of COVID.
Okay.
But I do know people who've had bad side effects and lingering effects. But beyond that, I know people who have died in their 40s, whether it be cancer or whether it be some other, and I'm not talking about an accident that was, but health related.
Yeah.
And so it is like you make fun of it. I texted a friend of mine texted me this morning. A lot of, you get a lot of texts on your birthday, especially when you're 50.
Sure.
And they're like, hey, well, congratulations or whatever. And I said, well, it beats not making it here.
Yeah.
So there is a lot to, and I've, it is.
There's a lot.
It's weird.
I'm sure it is. There's a lot. So because there are some topics I think just like life discussions worth having, like around the idea of turning 50. And like you brought up, do I think 50 is old? I honestly don't. I would like when
it's easy for you to say.
No, I don't though.
But see, you don't think 34 is young.
I don't.
I do.
Really?
Oh yeah.
No, see, I don't think 34 is that much. I don't think it's that young anymore. However, the aspect of 50, like I joke about this all the time. We've had conversations about like the longevity of life and how it's changing and how it's shifted everything. I mean, like we've joked before about like Social Security and like you got married when you were 20 because you were going to die when you were 55. And like, so when I think of like where we're at now in society and what people are doing and like, I mean, we looked at the Forbes list the other day and the majority of those people didn't have their fortune until they were in their 70s. So I like, and I bet you some of them feel like they're just starting. Like, so
they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, okay. See, I disagree. I don't think 50 is that old. Well,
I don't know. I mean, I've lived an incredibly charmed and fortunate life, and it's and I mean that. Like one of the most applicable quotes I've ever heard was someone said, "Life is not fair." And I know that because I've gotten so much more than I deserve. And I feel like they were talking to me.
Okay.
So the whole, like, I can't really play the woe. It's like they talk about like Bruce Springsteen singing about he lost his job down at the plant. And they're like, would you shut up? So that's kind of, life has been very, very good to me. So I have, it's hard. There isn't a semblance though, because like I remember turning 40. I got my picture. I took a picture at Knoebels Grove at 40. This is my remembrance of 40. Because the flyer thing, it's it always went by the pine tree and you felt like you could stick your. Well, they put it in, I guess, in 1971. Okay. Because that's I was born November of 1971. So when I was there the one day and it had this big sign. It said 40 years of flying.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's me. I need my picture with that. So I had that. And at 40, like 50 seems like so far off. And now, so like the next one is 60. And is 60 old?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I
see your point. I was talking with Carrie about this. This was a couple of weeks ago. And like when you think about the birthdays that bother you, the birthdays that didn't bother you, things like that, would you remember like what was the first birthday that kind of like maybe it didn't even bother you, but it was kind of like, wait, what's happening? Like, what age was it where you were kind of like, question. This is...
I remember turning 30 and thinking I'm not young anymore.
Okay. So it's so funny you say that. So what I told Carrie was my 30th didn't bother me at all. Like, it was like the pie in the sky, nothing, whatever. 31 was the first time, like brutal, like 3.5 years ago, where I kind of looked around and I was like, this is happening. Like,
31. 31.
But this is what I think it is.
You don't like 21 is a big age. 31, there's nothing to it.
31, and that's kind of, I think, why it hit me that way. Because with 30, I had family and I had friends, and like there was this, and people were around and everything else. And not that like people like
they didn't care anymore.
At 31, like there wasn't really this big birthday to be had. I'm now diving into my 30s, and I just remember that was the first birthday where I was like, oh wow. Now here's the funny part. 30, like the last 3 haven't bothered me at all. Like it really hasn't phased me anything else. 35, and I've already kind of like pre-warned my girlfriend. On the horizon of 35, I feel a little bit like 31, where I'm kind of like, I'm going to be closer to 40 than 30. And like,
that you're missing the high side of it though.
Okay.
At 35, you can run for president.
I hadn't thought of that.
So 35 opens new doors.
I hadn't thought of that.
Right now, you're limited to the House or the Senate, but in 35.
Any realistic goals that I can look forward to at 35?
Well, you can be.
So, do you remember an age then, or just nothing sticks with you?
No,
like
nothing
that?
real. I think one of the aspects in
is it because you can't remember because
there's once you start having kids. I had my first kid at 29.
Okay.
And then, and then I had another, and then I had another. And when you have 3 kids, there's a point we had 3 kids, none of them in kindergarten yet. And there's just a numbness for a decade until they can. And now I got a kid in college. I got a kid that's a senior. I got a kid that's a freshman in high school. And, it's like on Halloween, they're like, hey, I'm going here and I'm going here. And, your kids don't come home from school. Like, where are they at? Are they play practice? Are she at work? And then you're texting them like, where are you at today? And so there's so much. And now because of that, it gives you free time again.
Sure.
Because, it's Sunday, it's Halloween weekend. I have my kids this weekend and they're gone the whole time.
Yeah. So
now you're like, well, I have my kids and I don't have my kids. So like, what am I going to do now? So I think there's a lot of that. And I've always thought my Dr. Phil moment is for midlife crisis people, because I don't think I ever had one.
Okay.
And I don't think it's about running out of time. I really don't think that's what it's about. I think we're programmed in society. You grow up, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you have the house, you have the white picket fence, and you live happily ever after. And I think there are so many people that do all those things that they're supposed to do. They not necessarily want to do them, but they're supposed to do them. And then one day they wake up and they've checked all the boxes: college, job, house, kids. And then they're like, is this all there is?
Well, to play along with your analogy, I think people realize there might have been different boxes that they would have enjoyed more, or there would have been different boxes they missed out on.
Correct. Because they think that if I check all these boxes, and I think the one box that is college. You don't necessarily need college, depending on what field you want to go into.
Sure.
But you found your job that you're supposed, you're going to go to work 40 hours a week, and you're going to love it, and you're going to make money, you have a house, and you're going to come home, and you're going to have all these, and you're going to be blissfully happy. And people come home and they're like, I'm not blissfully happy. I'm kind of unfulfilled. And is this what I'm supposed to do the rest of my life? And that's where I think the midlife crisis comes from. Because as you said, people, I think too often, at least through now, I think the younger generation is getting away from that. But our generation and the older generations was like, this is how you're supposed to live, and this is what you do.
Yeah.
So
there's a big, not to like dive away from the conversation too much, but there's a big push right now where they're saying for income reasons and for raises and stuff like that, after 2 years, like you need to leave your job. Like they've basically said that if you're somewhere for 2 years, if you haven't moved up, or like it is time to move on, because they've realized people who stick around for more than 2 years, there's like a percentage, like all this data that shows it actually isn't good for your career. But part of that I've always thought was kind of like the underlying piece of that is like, if you switch your job every 2 years, you're trying, by the time after 10 years, you've tried 5 different things. And so eventually you're going to figure it out like, oh, this fulfilled me, or I enjoyed doing this, or I liked working with these people, or this is. So I do think not only from like a financial standpoint, an income standpoint of like switching job every 2 years, but I think it goes along with what you're saying, like the generation below me and even some of my generation has kind of figured out like, if you're not loving what you're doing, like jump ship, because it's not going to necessarily get better or become what you want it to be.
No,
and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm just saying like
it's just different.
The sentiment you're expressing is certainly true, especially in like my age group and the age group below.
Well, I think it started with my generation talking to our parents when our parents was like, this is how you do it. And we said, why? And they just kind of looked back and said, because that's just what you do. And we kind of said, I don't want to. And it finally started like my parents' generation. And I know there was the 60s and the hippies and all that stuff, but they were a very like, this is how you live. So, yeah, it is. I don't know.
It's interesting.
That's where I would say this too. One of the other things that I've noticed in life, and I've noticed through, divorce of my own and all these things, the one thing that I would say for society in general, if we spent as much time pursuing happiness as we do pursuing love, the world would be a much happier place. and I mean that, like, one of the things that society sucks at is equations. And I don't just mean from math, but like they're the people that believe that if you're the intense screamer, yeller coach, that makes you a good coach. And it is so untrue. And there are people that think you go get a job, and you get a good job and you make lots of money, that will bring you happiness and fulfillment. And it is not necessarily true. And I've been shocked in my because you get to the age when you're in your 40s, people are on second marriages, or they're out of their first marriage, or whatever the case may be. You even have people who are, widows and widowers. And it's like their quest is to find companionship because they feel lost without it. And I understand that, like, when love works, it is this beautiful thing, and there are people that are, but it also, I understand, you don't really, it just kind of shows up. It's like wind. Like it's out there and when you can feel it, but you can't make it. And the people that are constantly searching for it, I feel like are searching out of an insecurity level because they can't feel the happiness out of themselves.
Yeah.
And it is just too bad that, that we haven't been taught, or we haven't understood that fulfillment doesn't come from another person. If you make the most out of who you are and find your own happiness, now you have an even greater chance of finding happiness with someone else, because you have to find happiness within first. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would say in my 50 years, that it's too bad people don't get that.
Yeah, no, this is deep. I'm enjoying this conversation. Part of what you said along, I've always wondered, like, with people looking for love, because obviously for me, like, having never been married, but I've dated some great people. I've had some great relationships. I've had some bad relationships.
Haven't we all?
Like, yeah. One of the things that I like, call it oblivious, like I can be a little oblivious to it, but I truly believe like comparison is the thief of joy. And so I've always wondered, you've never heard that before?
I have never heard that.
Yeah, there you go. 50 years, you're still learning.
Comparison
is the thief of joy. And I've always, most people apply that to like their jobs or their, competition, right? But very rarely do people apply that to like looking for their significant other or dating or anything like that. And I've always, like, one of the things that I always do with people who like I've talked with, whether it's friends or whoever it may be, I'll say to them, like, how long have you been single? Are all of your friends dating somebody? And it's amazing how many times, if all your friends are in a relationship, all you want to be in is in a relationship. And so like that comparison of looking in what other people have, it kind of robs you of that joy of like being single and finding yourself and being happy and discovering, you know, what you actually want. And so I agree with you in the sense like there is this idea of companionship matters. It really, really does. But there is this idea of like when you force it or when you try to do something like that, I've always come back to that quote, comparison is the thief of joy.
I love that quote.
It has stayed with me for a very, very long time.
I've said, as I've gone through.
Real quick, how many people do you think, like when people are looking for a relationship, how many of them do you think are doing it because they see other people are happy in their relationship?
I think they do it because they're bored.
I think
people mistake loneliness for boredom.
But see, I think they're only bored because their friends or the people in their circle have their own relationships.
And I get that. But like,
and that's when the comparison.
When I wake up on a Saturday morning and I don't have kids. Well, I don't have my kids. I still have kids. Right. But when they're with their mother or the ones off at college. When I wake up on a Saturday morning with no kids in the house, I'm never bored. I can fill my day in a multitude of ways. And I really think that a lot of people feel like societally as adults, I've made this analogy a 1,000 times. You lose your job, you need to get a new job because you're an adult and that's the way the world works. You lose your relationship, you need to find a new relationship because you're an adult and that's how the world works. I would argue that there are a few things in life that create more angst and strife and heartache than relationships. So people think my only path to happiness is through a relationship. The bad relationships cause way more problems than they cause good. And it is so like you would be shocked at how many people who've been married a long time or have been married who say to me like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, I'm doing whatever I want. And this look of jealousy just falls right over their face because I'll go to the gym when I want. I'll go to work when I want.
You're not wrong. What benefits you is you kind of opened up the show with this. Like you feel, what was the quote you used about how you feel like you've been blessed or you feel?
Oh, yes.
What did you say?
I've lived I don't know.
A charmed life.
Charmed life.
A charmed life. Your support system, the community and the people and just the things you have around you lend yourself to having a better experience in that bubble than other people.
I agree.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't think you're wrong, but I think the pillars underneath you that allow you to feel that way are sturdy.
Everyone's situation is unique.
Yes.
And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I just wish people, and I think I've told this story before, and if I did, forgive me, but when I was in the play that I was in, and there were times. Well, let me backtrack. I'd see these people volunteer for things, like old people that volunteer and whatever, and I would just think like, why are they doing this? And I know it's kind of for the good, but whatever. It's you see these guys that are umpiring Little League games, or they're doing all this stuff, and you're like, don't they have something better to do? But then when I was in the show that I did at the CTL, and I saw all the people behind the scenes, and they're all volunteers, essentially. Even like the director is basically a volunteer. It's just for the love of the theater. Sure. But I'm talking about, costume people and stage managers and prop people and all this stuff. And then as I'm watching these, and these are old people that come in and sew the costumes, and it was their job, and it was their job to make the period piece look like the period piece. And I thought all this stuff. And then after I was in it, I was like, at least it gives them a purpose. It gives them something to look forward to and to be passionate about and excited about. And if you don't have that, as dumb as it is to being a concession stand volunteer who just wants to make sure that everything's stocked or everything, just something outside, other than that the counters are wiped down and you've got the trash out and the towels are folded. Like there has to be something outside of your house that you care about. And seeing these people, and then when the show goes off and you see how good the show is, and you hear stories about the minute details of people who were old enough to understand that costume was right for that era. Sure. That it fit for the 40s, but it wouldn't have fit for the 60s. Whereas I'm like, well, they're all old, but the people who get it, they know.
Right.
And it's just like for us when we watch a sports movie and we see something corny, and we're like, as a sports fan, that I can't do that. Right. So, and those are, it's just, I don't know. It baffles me how we have so much at our fingertips. We have so many things to entertain us, to educate us, to pass the time. And there's still people still struggle so much for happiness.
Well, I think you use the word like support, and the word that I would use is appreciation. I think a lot of times, whether it's relationships or whether it's, like you said, volunteering or whatever, people seek appreciation. And for some people, they look for that in a relationship with a significant other. Some people look for it by volunteering and donating their time. Other people look for it in being successful. And if I'm successful, people will appreciate the work that I'm doing. One way or another, a lot of the things that we do comes down to appreciation. Do we think if we do X at the end of it, we will be appreciated for it? And it's amazing what people will do if they feel like they're going to be appreciated. I really believe that.
That's probably a very fair point. Yeah, I can see that. I think if I could stress like one thing to my kids, it's do not base your value on what someone else says about you. And obviously there are people, and I don't mean that exclusively, there are people that are going to be close to you in your life that if they sit you down and say, hey, you're being a prick, like, then we need to listen. And It doesn't mean that, like, we do have to have our tentacles up and take some outside receptors. But there are just too many people, and I equate this more with young girls and with young guys, but guys are susceptible to it too, that they base their value on the response they get from their significant other. And, like I've told people that we go through this, some relationships were doomed. Like I've told people, there's no way that person was ever going to be married for 40 years. It's not the way they're wired. So don't beat yourself up over it. It's just, it's just them. But I do wish people could look internally and find ways to, educate and entertain. And I think that's another thing too. We've gotten so spoiled with television and with quick artificial entertainment that we don't realize that projects that aren't a comedy show are still so rewarding and enjoyable, just in a different way. Sure. And trying to learn to paint, or going back to take a class to do, there's so many things that we can do that are one of the most enjoyable things of my adult life was when I wrote my book. Okay. And it wasn't a laugh a minute, but it also wasn't painful. And I know to some people they'd be like, oh my God, that would be painful. And I get that. Right. But it's something I enjoyed, and it's not a 2-hour movie. It's not something that you laugh and you're excited. There's times of it that it was a grind, but the fulfillment and the enjoyment of it to go back and reread it again and decide that that's really good and that's going in the book. Yeah. Is a feeling that's a feeling I got internally that I couldn't get from anyone else. But then when people read it and they agree, then of course it feels good. And then the people that disagree, that feels bad. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. Not to switch topics, your kids, they reached out to you today? How are they handling it?
That I'm 50?
Yes.
They don't care.
They could care less?
My oldest daughter, who's one in college, she texted me this morning. My son texted me this morning. My middle daughter, I was supposed to leave a check for her on the table about some AP exams, and I forgot. So I texted her.
But you have a good excuse now.
Well, I forgot, and I was like, oh God, and I went in and dropped it off at the school because I was like, I was supposed to make this out to the high school, so can I just leave it at the office? Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't know.
Well, yeah. What do you? I mean, some very basic generic questions. probably don't have like a physical bucket list. I'm assuming you don't. Like you don't have like an actual like piece of paper. Like
oh no, I've not written anything down.
But you have mental ideas of like what you would still like to do and what you have done, and like out of that mental bucket list, like 40%, 60%, 80%, like how far along your bucket list do you feel?
Well, see, one of the things, that's a very good question. I
would ask better ones if you'd shut up a while.
I'm not. Well, I couldn't answer them, so that's why I talk over them, because I don't want to get stumped.
Yeah.
I'm not a traveler.
Okay.
So, but there are places I always wanted to see, like Redwood National Park.
Yes.
And now I'm afraid it's going to burn down. So, but places like that, I've always wanted to go to Nashville and New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I've never been to either.
Yep. But did you feel the urge to do it, or is it just now kicking in?
No, I always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
And I've wanted to go to Wrigley Field, and I had a chance to go to Wrigley Field, and that's a story for another day, and that pisses me off.
Okay.
But one of the other aspects is, like, even now, to say, hey, next year, let's go to the Kentucky Derby. Well, my son's going to be a freshman. He's going to be playing high school baseball, and it's right in the middle of baseball season. It's hard to run to Kentucky and back in the middle of baseball season.
Sure.
So a lot of these things have come to, do you have time? When do they fit into your schedule?
Yeah.
So that's it. I think between, like, I've been to Vegas. I would love to go to Vegas with a group of like 6 or 8 guys and just, be idiots. But have you been to Vegas?
I've been to Vegas, I want to say 4 times now.
I can't go for more than like 3 days. I don't know how people do it for a week.
I believe 2 were family trips and then 2 were bachelor parties.
You have to be rich to be able to go to Vegas for
consistent. I mean,
for a week,
consistently
to
go
stay
or
for a
to
week.
go for a while. Yes.
Because first of all,
if you go with a group, though, it's a little easier because if you're divvying everything up, it makes the task a little less daunting.
So yeah, I would love. I've been to a tropical island. That was cool. I guess it's. So from the travel wise, I don't know.
See, my thing, I don't really have I don't have a physical bucket list. I do have like mental check marks that I've kind of always wanted to kind of try to like check off as I'm going. The one for me that scares me is traveling because I don't enjoy it. I've never enjoyed like getting on a plane, getting on a bus,
getting on a plane
being away from home for after 2 or 3 days, I am ready to like go back.
That's what I told people. I'm king of the day trip.
Yeah, yes. So my fear now is like, as I get older, I feel like that's not even a fear, but I think it's going to change my bucket list because I think as I get older, I will be more inclined to do it. And so I feel like people have like a finite bucket list, whereas I feel like really that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to like, you try to knock off a few every year and then you add a few every year. And it just kind of continuously goes. I've never understood like the finite part of the bucket list. Like you have this concrete list and you're going to finish it. I feel like the bucket list should be to infinity. Like you're just kind of adding stuff.
It's like the fridge. You take stuff out, you put stuff back in.
Yeah, because I feel like over time, right now, if I actually wrote down the things I want to do, I don't know if a traveling thing would be on the list. But I know like 5, 10, 15 years from now, like there are going to be places I'm going to want to see. And like, I'm going to finally get kind of like the kick in the ass to get going. Like if you want to see this thing, like we got to do it. So I don't know. I think everyone's bucket list should have kind of like a rolling effect to it.
No, I get that. I mean, my whole thing is like, and I remember saying this to a buddy a long time ago about writing. When I'm 60, there are a lot of creative projects that I would like to get done, much more than to say, I want to go to Nashville. And even though I do, but like say this year, if you're like, you went to Nashville, but you didn't finish this, I would much rather finish this.
Okay.
So those are most of the thing. But the bucket list is always something. I think I've never heard anyone say it the way you just said it, but that is true. That there needs to be, it didn't come down off the mountain on a stone tablet. It's always adjustable. Yeah. And there should be additions. And the other aspect is like, what was important to you, however many years ago, once you haven't got there, like maybe that's not so important anymore, and maybe something else is now more important.
It's weird that it's called a list, because a list implies it's something to be finished. And I've just never viewed it as like it's ever going to be finished. I just always assumed that it would be like the next.
There's
step.
lots of husbands who their honeydew list is never finished.
There you go. So maybe lists aren't
they know that it's.
This one might be tricky for you, but I think it's worth asking on your 50th birthday. One thing.
Regrets?
Not necessarily.
I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Not so much like regrets, but like, is there a fork in the road that you reflect back on where you just wonder, like, not so much that the other direction would have been better, the other direction would have been worse, but it's just that fork in the road of just like, we'll never know. Is like, do you kind of have like a fork in the road moment?
You know what? I don't, but the one that has come to me, and like my part of the great blessings in my life is who my brother is, and the benefits that have come along with having a brother who's been so successful, and because of his career path was in baseball, and because I loved baseball on my own, like it wasn't. I didn't love, there's things like you see dads who, like me, I'd never been to the theater. I could have cared less about the theater until my daughters got into theater. And now I'm a theater fan. Like I was a baseball fan, whether Mike wouldn't have been able to throw at all. Right. So the fact that he was really successful in something that I loved anyway. So much of my life, I don't say it was dedicated to, but like I was an Uber fan.
Sure.
And I've wondered at times what life would have held for me if I wasn't so engrossed with Major League Baseball for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because, but I also think like I would have been one of those people, and a lot of it's because of my parents and the upbringing, that I would have loved to go to film school, but I think that would have gone over like
a fart in the wind.
Like a fart where?
In the wind.
Oh, I've heard a fart in church.
Okay.
I've heard a fart in a diver's mask.
Yeah.
I've never heard a fart in the wind.
Well,
it would not have gone over well if I would have said, I don't want to go get a real degree. I want to go to film school.
Isn't the idea of a fart in the wind like it's got like it was ignored? Like it took. Like, I just thought your parents would have ignored you. Like,
I don't know.
They wouldn't have wanted you to go to film school. They did that. Idea would have just been like a.
But
fart
it would have, like those things would have been interesting, and it's. But like again, like this is one of the other internal struggles I have. Like I see people who are how do I say this? Who are dumber than I am, who have been way more successful than I am financially, like in whatever career path they chose. That. And there's that point of what you say about comparison, and is the thief of joy. So there are times that I look at these people, I'm like, God, I could have done that.
Yeah.
But at the same point, I know, like, I don't know what battles they're dealing with, and I don't know what struggles they're having in life. And I know that I wake up happy every day.
Yes.
So how do I look at them and be jealous of them when I wake up happy every day?
So this is, I'm just gonna spin it around to me for a second here on your 50th birthday. The reason I think that quote has always resonated with me, we've never really talked much about my sister before. My sister is...
Because your parents love her more and you're jealous.
My sister, so I have a younger sister, but I've always said she is my older sister. My sister, in a lot of ways, was naturally more inclined than me. Naturally was a better athlete, very attractive person. Just
more likable, more likable.
She was definitely like more like people socially, kind of like she was, kind of the party person, more fun than me.
Because she was younger. That's the younger child.
Always it wasn't so much that things were easier for her, but it just, everything seemed so natural to her. And even as we got older, like she got married first. She has kids now before me. She got a house before me. Like, she's just always kind of inched all those things along. But the weird part for me is like, I've never compared myself to her ever. Like I never felt like, oh, like I was just always happy for her. Like I was just always kind of like like, yeah, she's really gifted. Like, she's very talented. Like she just kind of falls into these things because like she knows what she wants or what she's looking for. And I've always appreciated that about her, but I never let the comparison kind of like bog me down. So I've always argued like it was a very innate thing. Like, I think I had to have that, because if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have a good relationship with her.
Well,
Like,
it's funny because people talk about sibling rivalries, and I'm sure they exist.
yeah. And that's why I brought it up, because I think like you admired your brother. Like, there wasn't really a animosity so much as you were just saying, like, I was an uber fan. Like I wanted them to do well and I was entranced by it. So it's funny how when you have that relationship with your sibling, you almost get handed like the ability to like not compare in a way. I don't know how else to describe
I know what you mean. And people have wondered that and I don't know, when I was really young and I was a good athlete, and I can remember being like, I'm good, but I'm not that good. Like, and it was, so there wasn't, maybe if we were twins, it would have been really hard.
Mm.
But just in the aspect, like he was just better. And that wasn't a bad thing that he was better.
Sure.
It was a great thing that he was better, because he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
So like, so that is an aspect. And I'm sure that I would bet in the sibling rivalry world, there's like no middle ground, because there are lots of siblings like you and I who are just proud and supportive and loving. And there's lots of people that fall on that side. Mm. And then there are other people who are either jealous or they feel like their parents love them more than their parents. And in some of these situations, it's the parents to blame, because the parents doted on the more talented or doted on the older or the younger, whatever. But yeah, it is. I think there's either no sibling rivalry at all, or there's all kinds of sibling rivalry for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would suck to grow up in a family where you were bothered by the success, either the overall success or just the individual traits that your siblings were better than you at.
The comparison thing would be tough.
That would be a bad way to live.
I asked you about the fork in the road. I'll give you a chance to gloat. What's, rather than a fork in the road that you didn't take, is there a thing or a moment that you feel like you nailed?
Sometimes the fork in the road that you didn't take is the one you nailed.
Is the one. That's very true as well. Is there a moment, 50 years in, is there a moment you feel like, reflecting back, is there a moment you feel like there was something there where you were like, you know what, I think I got that one right, or I'm happy I did that, or I'm, something along those lines? And that's a very
that's a good question. I think there's a couple. I think I've been I always thought, like, growing up and going through sports, that if I was a little league coach, I thought I would be a good one, because I thought I could not only teach the kids the game, but I could create an environment that the kids would enjoy being at. And I'm very happy of how my youth coaching career has turned out thus far. Now, maybe it takes a turn and goes sideways. I'm proud that and one of the aspects is from like being around Jerry and Jerry, who works with us, and just the people who just kind of have the courage to just go for it. And I'm really glad I did the play that I was in with and the only reason I auditioned is because my daughter asked me to audition, and I never thought I'd get the lead, because why would you give the lead to somebody who's never been in a play before? Sure. But I'm really proud that I did that, because it was scary and it was hard and it took a lot of work, but I also made a lot of new friends and it was fun. Yeah. And I'm proud that I've actually sat down and written as much as I've written, because somewhere along the line, I sold one screenplay way back when. I think I've completed 8 of them that I'm proud of. Mm-hmm. I've written other ones that I'm not proud of, that suck, that no one will ever see.
Sure.
But then I did turn one of them into a book. And just the fact that it's not something you can do overnight. Like if you're a musician, you can write a song. I heard the Rolling Stones wrote Satisfaction in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I also heard Def Leppard wrote Animal in a year, because they couldn't get it right. They couldn't all agree and stuff like that. Right. So I understand that some things take a while, but when you're going to sit down and write 100 pages, or write, I think my novel's 270 some pages.
Okay.
Like it takes time, and
Sure.
just the stick-to-itiveness to see it through are probably the proudest things, because there's lots and lots of things in life I've started that I have not finished.
Yeah.
And stick-to-itiveness is not always my strength.
I think that is one of the hardest parts of life that doesn't get talked about enough. And most of the time people talk about it like as procrastination, but I think it's deeper than that, because I think for a lot of us, the challenge isn't starting. I really don't. I think a lot of us, like, even if you're not putting pen to paper or you're not physically doing something, our brains are always turning. And so there's a lot of people walking around that, like, they've started the process. Like, they have this idea and it's in their head and they've thought about how it could work and all this stuff. The hardest part is finishing. That is, in my young, naive life, I don't have your experience yet, but in my
No, you do not.
Yes. In my young, naive life, I've literally gotten to the point where, like, when you talk about like motivation and like quotes and like all that stuff, at one point I was actually flipping through one of my notebooks the other day, and in big bold letters, I had actually put F word execute. And basically what I was telling myself was, like, just finish, like, just all these things you've started and the things you've come up with and everything, like, just pick one and finish it. And so I think that is one of the greatest challenges of life, is like picking the thing and finishing it so you can get to the next thing and finish it.
Well, I think what happens to me in writing, there's often times that I'm halfway through 3 different stories.
Mm-hmm.
And because when you get a new idea and when you get a new good idea, you can't get it out of your head.
Right.
You're thinking about it all the time. I tell people, because they're like, when do you have time to write? And I tell people I do most of my writing in the car. And then they picture me crashing into trees. Right. But I just turn the radio off and I sit in silence and I think about the story. So then when I actually go sit down, I'm not like staring at a blank screen. I'm just typing stuff that I've already figured out.
Yeah.
And that's fun. And there's nothing more fun for a writer than to come up with a new idea that you know is good and you start spewing it out.
Yeah.
But I never have it all done. Like they say Mozart used to have it all done in his head. I'm not Mozart. And once you get through with what you know, and now you've got to figure out, a lot of times you figured out the ending, and then you've got the beginning, and now you're trying to figure out how to, and now it becomes hard, and now it becomes work. And now there are times you go stare at the screen for 45 minutes while your brain just tries to come up with stuff. Yeah. And that's when it's easy to quit.
Yeah.
Because it's like when you get the gym membership and you're excited for the first week, you're pumped and you're feeling good. And by 3 weeks into it, it's not new. And there are times you don't feel like it. And that's when it really becomes the grind.
Yeah.
And people, we can explode out of the starting gate.
Yeah.
But we can't find that cruising speed where we have to go do it the days we don't want to do it. Because it's easy to do it when you want to do it.
Sure.
It's hard to do it when you don't.
Yep.
Or when the newness and the excitingness has worn off.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a task.
Yeah.
And you have to find the joy in the task.
I think I've told you about like the pit of despair.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes.
And the terminology, I'm going to mess up the terminology because I'm trying to remember it. But there is the place where most people fail or stop is the point where they're unrealized optimism, right? Like you have this optimism, like it's going to work and it's going to be great and all this.
Everything's going to be great.
And where most people fail is the next step. And it's basically like realism. Right. It's coming to reality of like, it's not that it's not possible, but now there's all these other little factors and then the doubts creep in and everything. So I have decided like the trick to life is if you have a switch that you can get past that, and like you use the word like a cruising altitude, like if you have the ability to like, when you run into that and you have the ability to just kind of like one step at a time until you finally get out of that and you get back onto the trajectory, but it is hard. It's really hard.
And this relates to real estate, because I'm in real estate, so you can kind of relate it to any aspect of life. But there was a guy in real estate, we see houses that are for sale by owner. And a lot of times as a realtor, especially if the sign's been in the yard a while and you know they're struggling, you kind of go to them and say like, hey, would you like me to help you? And sometimes they're really receptive. Sometimes they're not receptive and they're kind. Sometimes they chase you off of their porch.
Sure.
And I've had all three of them happen. I had some old guy that yelled at me like I was trying to rob the place. And so,
Right.
And this guy who was a professional, he was around speaking. He said, I learned when I call for sale by owner and I tell them that I'm a realtor, they turn from a human being to a monster for 60 seconds. And he said, I have to survive the phone call for 60 seconds to get back to the human. And I think there are so many of us that when I've never smoked, but I always thought like people who are trying to quit smoking and they're trying to avoid the nicotine fit. And my aspect is you need to embrace the nicotine fit because you need to want it, because once you want it and get through it, that's your way to being done smoking.
Sure.
Not like avoiding it because you can't avoid it forever. So there are those little tricks in our lives. I know one of the things that I've done with myself when I won't sit down and write, I've said to myself, okay, you're not writing anything today. Just go read the last 5 pages you wrote. And that's easy. All you have to do is sit there and read 5 pages.
Right.
But once I read 5 pages,
fires the synapses.
Now I'm back and it's fun again and it's not that hard. And oh my God, that's better than I thought.
Yeah.
And so, that's one of the other things I'm sure it'd be interesting with people that if people do construction projects and get halfway through it. And there have been multiple stories that I've written and I got halfway into it and I didn't like it very much. Yeah. And then I went to write something else. And then a year later, I went back and reread it. And I was like, oh, this is better than I thought. But just because you keep seeing it every day and you keep doing it every day, it loses the jokes aren't so funny and the twists aren't so unpredictable and it loses that.
Right.
So it's just the mundaneness. And sometimes you have to get away from that to appreciate it again. But
I'm with you. Do you want to hear any news? We don't have to. It's your birthday.
Let's not. I wanted to say this. I've been saving this for my birthday.
Okay.
Because I found this the other day. And this was one of my clickbait suckers. And I felt, I was almost 50. I felt like I was walking into it and I saw this up and I'm like, no, I'll play along with the joke. I'll go on. It was the sexiest zodiac signs according to the Mind Journal.
Okay.
Now, when you are thinking of the great thinkers, there's like Einstein and Stephen Hawking and the Mind Journal are all like right there on one level.
Okay.
So, the unsexiest of all the birthday groups. Do you want to take a guess?
I'm afraid to.
Aquarius. When's your birthday?
I believe I'm a Taurus.
Aquarius, January 20th to February 18th are the most unsexy people in the world. So when I clicked on this, I thought, okay, I'm doomed. What are you? What's your birthday?
May 16.
Yeah, you're a Taurus. You're 10 out of 12.
Okay.
So you are barely at all sexy. Who was Capricorn is 11. I was thinking of this. Virgo. Carrie is 9.
Okay.
So I'm surrounded by the most unsexy people in the world. So I kept going through and I was like, well, I'm in the top half. Well, I'm in the top third. Well, according to the mindjournal.com, which again, we've already established their brilliance. They're the Mind Journal.
Yes.
Scorpios are the sexiest of all the zodiac signs. How dare you question that?
Wait, the sign itself or the people?
Well, the people that are in the sign, that are of the sign.
I don't understand astrology.
Scorpios are the sexiest of all people. That's what it's saying.
Okay.
And it can't be wrong because it's on the internet. Incidentally, hold on. I was just there.
It's on the internet.
Hold on. I just lost. Aries is a Scorpio is 1. Pisces, which is February 19th to March 20th, is 2nd.
Okay. And
Aries, which is March 21st to April 19th, is 3rd. So those are the top 3. So apparently, I just need to focus on people with late winter and early spring birthdays because they're the only people of my sexiness group.
Right. And it's like you can't jump your number.
How can I go higher? I'm already the best.
Right. So
Scorpios.
You're gonna have to play down. Is what
I'm gonna have to play down. There's no way I can overachieve.
I forget the name of the movie, but have you ever heard him talk about the number system? Like you can't jump more than 2 numbers. So
No.
like if you're a 5, you can't date an 8. Like it's just
The only
the
way
numbers say you can't do
the
it.
only way. Now I've never seen that. That
It's
sounds
pretty
funny.
good.
The only way I would
She's
say
out
that.
of your league. Sorry, it just came to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've heard of that movie. It's Tony Danza, right?
No. This is
Oh no, that's She's Out of Control. I think
it is. It's very underrated, very enjoyable. If someone's looking for like a good laugh, like a raunchy date comedy, it is really.
Who's
really
not
good.
looking for a raunchy date?
There you go.
The only way a 5 can date an 8 is if the 8 doesn't know they're an 8.
Sure. I mean, I don't believe in the system. You're like explaining this to me like
No,
I buy
that
the
is-
system. But
Well, just in general.
in general,
I mean, that's really what you're looking for in life. You're looking for a 9 who believes that he or she is like a 7.
okay.
Because the last thing you want is a 9 who thinks she's a 10.
Okay, but
That is Excedrin headache number 27.
Once again, I don't believe in the number system. Clearly, you have bought into this. Do you believe in the idea that the numbers are different depending on where you are?
What do you mean?
Like you've heard of like a New York 10 or like an LA 7.
I've heard of the New York Groove.
You've never heard of this?
No.
So there's this idea like if I'm in North Central Pennsylvania and I'm a 7.
So a Blossberg 10 isn't the same as a New York 10?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's the idea of like if I'm in Blossberg and I'm a 7, there's this idea that like if I fly to LA, I'm a 4. do you believe in
I've
that?
never
I've never
heard that. No,
before.
that's kind of
Ever.
fun. No, this is my honest thought about this. And I told this to a buddy a long time ago. Like for whatever the attraction world is,
Yes.
there's no it's just like, did you ever take classes in college on a pass fail basis?
Mhm.
Did they have that?
Yeah.
And that's all it is. If the person you're dating is good enough that you're dating,
attracted to them.
you don't treat you don't treat anybody better than any other one. They're either on the team or they're not.
Yeah.
And you don't treat a 9 better than
Yeah.
if you were as hot as my last girlfriend, we'd go out to a fancier dinner. But it just doesn't work that way.
Do you believe that? So Jim Jeffries does a skit. Do you know Jim Jeffries?
I love Jim Jeffries.
Have you
He's
heard
the
him
Australian dude, right?
Yes.
He is funny.
Have you heard him do the skit on the scale?
No.
So his belief is that the scale is like a bell curve, meaning that 1 up to 5, down to 10.
Okay.
So the example uses like in his audience, there are no 10s and there are no 1s.
Okay.
It's mathematically improbable.
Okay.
He goes, there might be 1 9, there might be 1 2, a handful of 8s, a couple of 3s. He goes, all of us sitting in here are 4 5s and 6s. And then he goes, and I'm a 5, and I know this. He goes, because I have 2 eyes and they point the same direction, but they do not sparkle. 5. And then he goes, I have all my teeth, but they're a little crooked. 5. And he walks through and he literally breaks down the scale of like how you would, but Jim Jeffries' scale, the overwhelming majority of us are 4 5 and 6. There really aren't 1 2s and 3s, and there really aren't 7 or 8 9s and 10s.
Huh. Now I'm going to spend I'm going to ponder that deeply.
Yeah.
See, now this is
So the reason he does this is because like if you're a 4, if you have self-proclaimed yourself a 4 or 5, you are actually significantly closer. You're just as close to the 8 9s and 10s as the 6s and the 7s. And that's how he builds his confidence as a solid
because he
5.
accepts his spot on the roster.
He accepts his spot at the 5, but he goes, 6 and 7s are way closer to me than they are to the 8 9s and 10s. So when I see an 8 or a 9, why wouldn't I go talk to them? I have almost just as good a chance as a 6 or a 7. That's Jim Jeffries' scale.
See, now I would say this, and this goes just from beyond just physical attractiveness. I would say if I were a chick, if I were attracted to men, what would make him rate higher is because he's funny. Now, he's a comedian, so I'm guessing in real life he's funny. But I think that when you're talking about the whole scale of something, someone with a well-advanced sense of humor makes them way more attractive.
See, I think it's what do you lack? I think it's, so for example, if
you think it's the weakest link in the chain. And
I think so. This is what, like, and again, this is 100%. I have no scientific evidence of this. I've always thought, like, when I look at the successful couples in my life and people that have been together a long time and different things like that, like, if you're a really funny guy or girl, very rarely are you attracted or do you go after the really funny guy or girl. Most of the time, you are attracted to the things that you are voiding or that you are missing or that you are.
So
lacking.
You're saying the opposites attract thing?
Yes.
Or you're just trying to fill out the
of all
holes
the
in the roster?
Of all the like karma-ish, like unscientifically proven things, I firmly believe in the opposites attract. I really, really do.
Huh. Now, see, I've heard opposites attract, but they don't last because you need to have enough common ground
to bind you together.
Yes.
That would make sense. Again, I have no scientific evidence of this at all.
Huh.
Just in my life, I've noticed that opposites tend, and I'm not even talking like physically opposites. I just mean like from the personality standpoint, like your demeanor, you typically end up being attracted to somebody that does something better than you do, because how could you ever do that thing? So it becomes extremely attractive.
Maybe.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it and then get back to me.
I will. I'm thinking of the 4s, 5s, and 6s.
That one's good. It's really good. Scottie Pippen in a GQ interview. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
On Michael Jordan in the Last Dance documentary, quote, "He couldn't have been more condescending if he tried," end quote.
I have always got the impression that since it's been all set, like while they were playing, Jordan never won anything without Pippen.
Sure.
I think Pippen has always felt slighted, that like Batman was always very appreciative of Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Pippen feels like it was more of a Batman and Robin, where Jordan feels like it was more of a I was Superman and I didn't have a sidekick. And I don't think Pippen really likes Jordan all that much.
Using your analogy, I don't think we disagree. I think Jordan thought Pippen was every bit of Robin. I think the difference for Jordan is like, I will just go find another Robin. Like, I think in his mind, like, I'm going to find the person that I need. And if you're not going to be it, like, I will go find it.
Maybe.
That's how I would take your analogy.
It is unfortunate. And this goes back to all the things that we've talked about happiness way back when. And no one's listening, right?
Everyone's listening.
This has been a really good show that no one listens to.
It's your 50th
birthday. My 50th birthday. Everyone should listen. I have talked to coaches on the high school level and, being around, it's like being around. We're around not just coaches of the sports we're in, but all kinds of coaches from boys, girls, all the other sports. I've talked to multiple coaches who are successful, who are district champions, who talked about seasons that were no fun. And I look at these people and I'm like, how can this possibly be? Like, you're coaching a sport you love, the kids are playing a sport that they should love, you're having success, and nobody's enjoying themselves. And I don't understand how it works. It seems to me that it's just really sad that for these two guys who won 6 titles together and who three-peated twice when nobody could three-peat, and they did it twice. And then, like, at the end of it, they're not lifelong friends, and they're not – it's just sad.
Pippen's a very hard – I don't want to dive in too much of it because I want to get you a chance to ask you one more question before we end the show. The Pippen story is sad because there's an aspect here where, like, Jordan had both parents. Like, he came up from a 2-parent household, and like they weren't rich, but they weren't poor, and like he was brought up in a way, and he got to go to North Carolina on a full ride, and he was like the chosen one, and he was a high draft pick, and he came into the league, and Pippen's story is the opposite. The household was rough. He had multiple family members with disabilities that he was taking care of. They struggled financially the whole way through. He wasn't recruited to play basketball.
Yeah,
in
where
college.
he went to
Central Arkansas.
Central Arkansas.
Goes to
that
Central
basketball
Arkansas.
mecca of Central Arkansas.
Goes to Central Arkansas. He never was you could argue like until Jordan retired the first time, he never was seen as like the chosen one or somebody that like was necessarily like the best player on the team. And then once it's over, Jordan's, multi-hundred millionaire, billionaire. Pippen's out of money because he was trying to, he says, take care of his family and just bad financial advice. And their paths are just so different. I don't even know if Pippen's viewpoint of Jordan is justified, but I get it. Like, I understand why Pippen would feel bitter or would feel like he didn't get his fair shake when you look at what he had to go through to get to where he got to versus Jordan, and then even the end result in seeing what he had left over versus Jordan. I can see why that relationship would be incredibly strained. I really do.
Yes.
It's a tough story.
Yeah, you can tell that Jordan's not, Jordan is going to have relationships on his terms. It is not important. Like the fact that Jordan and Charles Barkley aren't friends anymore is just sad.
Yes. But the story I just told you, Jordan does not feel bad about the story I just told you. Jordan would say, like, I brought him along. Like, he had every opportunity. Like, are you kidding me? Like, look at the money he could have made. Like, if he would have, like, kept his money and saved right. And like,
no, I get
like
that.
He's just not ever going to necessarily. Now, I do think he's appreciative of him, like, to a point. Like he said in every speech he gives about basketball, like, it's like, I never won a championship without Scottie Pippen.
Exactly.
Like so it's not a lack of appreciation, but everything past that, he's never going to sympathize for anybody, even if it's Scottie Pippen. It's not in his, it's not what he does.
Yeah.
It just isn't. Very briefly, I wanted to give you the opportunity, and you may not even want the opportunity.
I don't.
Is there anybody after 50 years, anybody you want to shout out, anybody that you want? Do you want to give like a resounding whatever? You don't have to give like a full formal speech, but the floor is yours here for the end of the show.
Ha! No,
Okay.
It's just me. I mean, my parents have always been, well, you know what? What's really one of the fascinating, I've always got along better with my mom than my dad, because I shouldn't say always. And this comes back to because my brother was very much like my dad, and I was very not like my dad. And for a long time, my dad just thought like he's an idiot. And it took until like as we got like later in life, I know now looking back, and my parents are divorced, that there was a time that a lot of the marital strife was caused by me, even like inadvertently. And like, I was a good kid. I was a good student. But just personality wise that like, and I think partially because my brother was so successful that, I think as a mom, I think dads come down hard on the kids, and mom's job is to defend the kids. And I think that happens in a lot of households. And, I think that happened. And it really took until my parents were divorced. Now my dad and I get along great now that my parents are divorced. But it's also when we split up, I live with my mom. I moved back in with my mom after I split up with my ex. And I've said this to people, like, I knew my mom would take me in a heartbeat, and I knew I could never live with my dad. Yeah. Like, it just would not work. Sure. So, it's just odd, the family dynamics that are like that. Yeah. My brother's been always supportive of everything. It's been, people wonder like, as we talked about the jealousy, and like he's made there have been so many avenues of my life that are better because of him. And then I just, as you get, one of the other things that I realized in life, my kids I love my kids. I'm proud of my kids. My kids are healthy. And as you go through, when people get pregnant and they go for the ultrasound, and the thing for young people going to the ultrasound is to find out what they're having. Is it a boy or is it a girl? And my ex and I didn't want to know. We wanted to wait till the pregnancy. But then it took me like a couple times, and you start to hear some of these stories, and the ultrasound person is actually looking for things, and they're not just looking for the gender. They're looking for the development. Do they have, do the lungs look good? Does the heart look good?
Sure.
Do the kidneys look good? Like, this is a procedure that is not a reveal party. It is a medical process along the way, so they know if there's any birth defects. And I can remember, just my only intention of going to the ultrasound is not to find out what the sex is. And then I remember the time that the guy said to me, well, I'm actually looking for things, so hold on a second. And then you start to hear about kids and now they find out that prenatally and that there are issues with some of the kids, and they have there's birth defects or there's issues that they take care of it. And then you just get to the point where you're just like, I hope my kid's healthy. And of all the other stupid stuff, people hope their kids are really good at sports, and they hope their girls are really pretty, and they hope that this, and they get the lead in the play, and just the aspect that my kids are as healthy as they are, and as there's also that degree that you want your kids to stand out, but you just want your kids to be able to blend in and be normal. And so I've been lucky in that aspect too. Some of them have my allergies. I've passed those along,
Sure.
But just in general, that those are the things that you don't appreciate until you see some of the other unfortunate stories, or you hear some of the other unfortunate stories. Then you appreciate what you have.
Yeah, nice.
So that's it.
Well
I'm
done.
50. I'm 50.
Well done.
50.
That's good. And I got you to smile by the end of the show, so that was good.
I've been smiling all day.
That was good.
Except my back hurts. I don't know why. It started, my back hurt like 2 weeks ago.
I said to somebody, I bet you his bag's lighter now because he can't carry it now that he's 50.
You know what I did do the other day? I was like, my wallet, I have the Costanza wallet. And the other day I was like, this is absurd. So I started going through. I had 4 Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards in one wallet. I don't know if they're burned. I don't know if there's any money on any of them. Now they're home in a pile on my dresser. I took like 8 cards out of my wallet that are worthless. They might not be worthless. There may be money on them. I don't know. Yeah. But I had 4 in one wallet. So no, I do need to empty the bag. I do need to clean the desk at some point. There are some things I need to do, but
some things
on my bucket list, cleaning the desk is low on the priority order.
We've got to get that desk cleaned. Thank you guys for joining us today for Mark's 50th birthday.
Did anyone join us?
Yeah, people joined us. People said stuff. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Thank you to our sponsors, and be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Again, we're pushing forward. Now that we're past your birthday, now that that's old news, we do have the holiday wheel coming back here for December. So we're going to do the holiday countdown again. We have a podcast coming out soon, so you can listen to us in audio format if you're in the car, if you're on a jog, or however you'd like to.
You jog a lot.
Yeah, all the time. So we do have some stuff coming out. Keep your eye out for it as well. And we're excited. I'm excited for you. I really am. I'm excited for you that it's over. Like, I'm actually, don't get me wrong, like, enjoy your day. Like, I hope you sincerely enjoy it. I'm happy for you because I think it's just, I don't think it's stressful, but I'm sure it's something that, like, getting back to normal or just kind of having it past you will feel good. I'm excited for you in that.
It's like an artificial New Year's Day.
Yes.
It gives you a chance to kind of like, all right, where am I at? What do I want to do? Let's kind of organize some stuff mentally and let's get after it.
Yeah.
So that helped. And I do appreciate the time of year because I was born so early in November that winter is coming.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more downtime in winter. Now I'm coaching basketball again. So that there's, obviously there's going to be less downtime, but it's just the days are so long in the summer, and it's just, you seem like you're so busy in the summer, even when you're not that busy.
Yeah.
It's easier to get stuff done when it's dark out and and it's cold and snowy and there's less to do. Yeah. Unless you're like a snowmobile person and then you love the winter, but I'm not a skier because I would get hurt because my back hurts just sitting here.
Who was it? Sonny Bobo, right?
Sonny Bono.
Bono. What did I say?
Bobo.
Okay. Oh, you know why? So in The Office, Will Ferrell calls him Sonny Bobo, and that's the joke. And look at me. That is the joke that went right over my head.
Oh, yeah, it's Sonny Bono.
Okay.
Who hit a
See,
tree.
I missed that joke.
He killed himself, hit a tree.
Because he's like, Sonny Bobo. That's just good plain sense. Because the guy says, he's like, oh, never ski. Don't do it. He goes, oh, Sonny Bobo. That just makes good sense.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the one thing that was the thing
I just taught you
from
something.
From this conversation, after everything we just talked about, that's the one I'm going to hold on to. That's the nugget.
I'm glad I could help.
Sonny Bono.
I'm just here to spread knowledge.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina, and we will be back tomorrow.